Hey everyone, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Steve Bowling and Imran Khan of Kinda Funny Games to give our spoiler-filled thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you missed our discussion on the gameplay and presentation of the game, don't forget to check it out. But right now, we're focusing on the story, and there are some pretty big moments to talk about, so let's get right to it. And yeah, really, where should we start? Because I don't know if we want to just bust out of the gate and talk about the big stuff right away or build up to it or all that. But I guess overall, this is probably the best place to start. How did you guys leave the Final Fantasy VII Remake? Were you satisfied with the story, or has it left you wanting?
I feel like I'm satisfied by how it ended up, but I also feel like a huge chunk of the ending is a product of it being a multi-part series and not just a standalone game. I feel like the ending as it is would not exist were it a complete retelling of the entire story of the game instead of just the Midgar portion, because there's a lot of theatrics that I don't think would be necessary if we weren't playing just a portion of it.
I feel like I was probably one of the first reviewers to actually end up finishing that game, so I had nobody to talk to about it. So as the game was ending and I was texting other people at Kinda Funny being like, we need to talk about this, hurry up and finish this game soon, I was basically like Shinji clutching my head. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I didn't know if it was good. I needed a few more minutes to think about it. But as I started going through it, started really kind of parsing in my mind, I think I ended up really liking where they're taking the idea. Whether they stick that landing is a totally different question, but I am, as an iconoclast, I like the idea of taking beloved things and poking them and experimenting with them. And Final Fantasy VII Remake is a literal example of that.
Oh yeah. I guess the big revelation for me that really started making me question how things were structured, really just the entire time, it's like, what the heck are these things? Are the Whispers, those ghost-like entities? And when all the preview material was coming out and they were showing them, I'm like, oh, it's probably just the spirits of the people whose life energy was used by Mako and used as the energy. That's why they're all swarming, and that's why Aerith can see them. And because Aerith touched Cloud, now he can see them. But then they started acting in ways that really didn't fit that moniker, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And the big turning point for me is when the trio successfully stopped Reno and Rude from blowing up the pillar until Tifa was there and the Whispers got in the way and Rude succeeded in doing it. It's like, what is going on here? What are they doing? And of course, by the end, it's revealed these are basically destiny, fate, guiding them along so they match up with what originally happened in the first Final Fantasy VII. And that's a WTF moment. That's definitely a moment that's going to cause people to go what? Or this is stupid, or okay, I'm intrigued. Let me see. What are you going to do with this?
I mean, the reaction has been interesting because some people honestly feel hurt and betrayed by this, because this is not what Square Enix sold this game as. And I think that's a broader question of whether that was right for them to do that, whether to make it not being a Final Fantasy VII Remake the twist could, I can see people being actually fairly, put off by that. But honestly, I'm not sure it would even work. If they were straight up about it, if they said, yeah, this is not a straight up remake, we're changing a lot, then I think people would have better expectations coming into it, but it would not have been as effective.
Yes.
I agree that I think people would be put off if they had signaled that more aggressively. I think some of the trailers hinted at that, though. We saw Whispers in trailers and stuff like that, so people knew that there were definitely some narrative changes, or at least if they were paying attention to the trailers. But that being said, I don't think you have to look very far to see how turned off some people are. The comments on our review, yikes. they are full of anger and vitriol toward me specifically for liking the game, because I said that I love the remake, which I do, and I stand by that wholeheartedly. Some people are very, very upset. How could you love this game? They've destroyed Final Fantasy VII. I even heard some people say it's a sequel and not a remake, and that doesn't make a whole ton of sense.
I can kind of see it, because we'll get into it a little bit later, but there's some interpretations that make it seem like Final Fantasy VII has happened.
Yes. Or at least that there's a version of Final Fantasy VII that happened. Because the way I like to describe it, I haven't had this chance to describe it to anybody yet, but it's the way I've been kind of explaining it in my head, is it's a remake that knows it's a remake. There's a reason it's called the Final Fantasy VII Remake. This isn't just, Final Fantasy VII Remastered or something like that. Like, no, they know what they're doing going into this, and they're specifically making changes, and the whole end of the game is allowing for those changes to happen and really going from that, because let's be honest, they needed to have some sort of grand ending for this. They couldn't just end it with the rollerball boss and like, all right, we're heading out into the wild world, credits. That's not satisfying. But I'm also wondering if the way they decided to do it is almost too over the top with you. Well, let's just get right into it. You literally fighting Destiny. You need to defeat Destiny at the end of this game, and I don't know what the other Final Fantasy VIIs are going to be called at this point, because I don't think they're technically going to be remakes. They're going to be reinterpretations. They're going to take the same events and do something different with them, but they've quite firmly established, at least in my mind, there's a big chance that a lot of the major moments that we've seen in the original Final Fantasy VII are not going to happen.
Which, just to be clear, are we spoiling the original Final Fantasy VII here as well?
Yeah, I think we have to at this point. We have to be able to talk about all of it. So if you've not played the original, this is going into everything as well. Like, we're spoiling everything.
Okay, so yeah, like when that finished, my first thought was, oh, this is their reasoning for how to get Aerith alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's going to be the big branching part of this game, I think, is what happens if Aerith doesn't die, and what does that do to the main story?
Which is so fascinating, because I'll admit, I fangasmed when I realized, oh crap, this final fight against Sephiroth has Aerith involved too. It's the first time Aerith actually gets to fight Sephiroth, and that felt amazing.
Oh, absolutely. I loved that. And during the fight with Destiny, Cloud gets to see Aerith die.
Yes.
Like, they show iconic scenes from that. You also see, and this is what I found really interesting, and I discussed this recently with Kat Bailey from US Gamer on her podcast. You see the original ending of Final Fantasy VII, where Red 13 and presumably his offspring are looking at the ruins of Midgar. And they ask, like, what the hell was that? And Red 13 responds, that's what happens if we fail here.
Which is, like, when you think about Final Fantasy VII, it's not necessarily a happy ending, like, because we don't know really what like, the team beats Sephiroth. Presumably, they in the live stream stopped the meteor, but we don't know that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
we know they stopped Meteor. We don't know if
Children.
Advent Children answered that, but in the original, before Advent Children came out, you got the sense that you stopped Meteor, you saved the planet. What you didn't know is if the planet decided that humans could keep on living, because that was the big question. Is like, the planet might just decide, like, no, these guys aren't worth keeping around, we're just getting rid of them, and the planet can move on without them, which the Red 13 ending kind of indicated as well. It's like, oh no, we're going to give this species a chance now and let them do their own thing.
But also now Advent Children could just not have happened, or it could have happened. It could be a multiple universe thing, is what this game is kind of setting up, the fact that are a more Marvel-ish sort of world where there are the same people living here and there, because they do outright show in a, I guess, parallel universe, Zack, that has now survived.
Yeah, that one definitely confused me. It's like, is this indicating that Zack survived now, and that's how it all set up? But it's like, that's not possible, else we don't have Cloud. Like, what is that going to come into play? Like, are we getting a new version of Crisis Core at some point? Like,
so
what is happening?
That one was the most interesting to me, because when you do watch the actual Zack cutscene, when he makes that joke about Price of Freedom, which is like the best track from Crisis Core, but they show a bag of chips from like Shinra brand chips or whatever, and it has stamp on the front. But their stamp is a Yorkshire Terrier, which is different from FF7 Remake stamp, which is a Beagle. So that has to be a different world.
Yeah. Oh, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, the hints are really strong that you've basically altered the timeline and created a parallel universe, as it were, by defeating Destiny.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you've created it. I think it's just always... My interpretation was it's always been there, but like it just keeps redoing Final Fantasy VII the way it's supposed to be. Which is there's a larger discussion there about Nomura and what his like happiness level is at Square Enix, because like at this point Kingdom Hearts is just a big complaint letter about Versus 13, and Final Fantasy VII is about old ghosts that are trying to remake the game exactly as it was in the brave heroes who stopped them. There's a larger thing there, but it's hard to say if, like, was this the first time the ghosts have intervened? Have they been doing this before? Are there lots of different worlds? Is it just this one and the original?
Yeah, it's so hard to say. I mean, that's really where the sequels are going to come into place. Like, where do they go from here? Because I have a feeling like most of the beats are going to be the same. I think it's just the structure is going to be different. I think this gives them kind of a blank check to change up how you explore the rest of the planet and interact with the characters. Because there's some definite major changes. I'm like we're getting into the whole bit where they go through the portal and end up fighting Destiny. I was like, what is happening? Like it just seems like I was so confused, but I was also intrigued. And then it didn't sell me until they finally beat Destiny and you had the Sephiroth fight, and they kind of finally showed their hand about what they were doing with this whole setup. And I'm like, okay, I'm on board. Let me see how this is going to happen. It's going to be a few years until that happens, but it at least has me on board for now.
So let's talk about that Sephiroth fight, because that is the thing that I think is the most open to interpretation of what the whole thing with Sephiroth was. Because the original FF7, Sephiroth was not that big a deal until like the Shinra building. He was occasionally like a small flashback from Cloud that mentions him, but you didn't really see him or anything like that until you saw his sword like in the back of President Shinra. This one has Cloud thinking about him pretty much on the clock, like every couple of hours. And it's not very clear that he's actually there until you confront him in front of Jenova. And then that's someone that everyone sees, and he actually breaks the bridge beneath them. Then he kills Barret, then, he ends up creating the portal that Aerith then redirects to fighting Destiny instead. My interpretation, and I may be super off base, and like by the time the next game comes out, I may be like clowned on for this thought, is that it's not this world's Sephiroth. It is a Sephiroth who was already lost in another Final Fantasy VII, and has decided to come to this world, lure them into defeating Fate, and now he's free to do whatever he wants. He could conceivably win this one because Fate has not dictated that he has.
That is a very interesting interpretation that I could see happen. That's the thing.
There's a couple of hints, because like when he first shows up, but when he creates that portal, Aerith tells him, "You're wrong. Everything about you is wrong," which can be interpreted a couple of different ways. There's when you start fighting him and you get 3 party members, and they're variable party members. So I think I got Tifa and Barret.
Oh, I got Tifa and Aerith.
Yeah, it can go to any of the 4 characters, or it has always be Cloud. But yeah, he says something like, "Oh, this brings back memories." But that wouldn't make any. Is he just saying that about Cloud, or why did he wait till the 3 of them were there?
Yeah, it really does feel like that. And they even recreate the scene at the very end of Final Fantasy VII where Cloud, that cutscene where Cloud unleashes Omnislash on Sephiroth. And that kind of plays out again here, except Cloud doesn't actually defeat him. He's like, "Nope, you're not ready yet," and kind of disappears.
It's a really fascinating thing, because it does seem like it's a more experienced Sephiroth. He says, like, you have 7 seconds to remember or something like that, or to... I forget exactly what his line was.
What will you do in these next 7 seconds, or something like that?
Yeah, but it does make it seem like, one, he does need Cloud to bring him... I'm blanking on the actual episode and story there, but Sephiroth needs Cloud to bring him something to, like, revive him and start this whole thing over. But the other thing is just... he seems to know more than he's saying, and it doesn't seem like Jenova powered. It seems like an actual Sephiroth machination.
Yeah, this is different than the Jenova controlled by Sephiroth. We did fight that, but it's very different.
The thing that makes me think that this Sephiroth is from another timeline is the fact that he, when you fight him towards the end of the game, he has the one wing, which in the original continuity of Final Fantasy VII, you didn't see wings on Sephiroth until he was Safer Sephiroth at the very end. And it seems, I understand that that's like a modern interpretation, like he's depicted with that one black wing a lot these days, but it just seemed really odd that this early in the story we're seeing that from him, combined with all his the strange dialogue. Like the 7 seconds thing really stood out to me too. And I'm still trying to parse what exactly that means. But for me, the moment where it kind of clicked in my mind that this might not be the Sephiroth of this timeline, if that makes sense, is it was that wing. It just seemed out of character for being in the Midgar portion of the game.
I mean, to your point too, they actually do make a point of that wing, because when that fight is over, Cloud is holding a feather, and the feather like kind of dusts away. So they do show that. They do want to say like, yeah, this is a symbol of Sephiroth. Whether that's lazy writing or it's meant to mean something, we don't know yet.
Well, it's interesting too, because there's that notable bombing mission where Cloud has that headache and he sees the feather, the black feather that disappears, which was always odd to me, because in the original you had somebody talking to you and it's like, this is not what you think and stuff like that, which, you know, later interpretations of like, okay, that's Zack in Cloud's head. But if we're going by the ending of this game where it seems that Zack survived, maybe that's why it's Sephiroth showing up instead of Zack in Cloud's head, at least at this point.
I can also kind of get the feeling Aerith knows more than she's saying too.
Oh yeah,
like,
definitely.
She kind of dropped she said like, I could have told you guys about this Destiny thing earlier, but I was kind of scared. So I assume she knows she's dying, or thinks that she's like, or it'll be necessary for her to die for the holy materia to activate. But
that is also very possible, because a lot of times when Cloud interacts with the Whispers, he'll see visions. Like when he first gets to the pillar, he sees a vision of it falling right away. Mm-hmm. So you have to imagine that Aerith might be getting similar visions of her future.
She says that every time a Whisper has touched her, she has lost a part of herself. So I kind of wonder if it's like these are trying to make her into the Aerith that like was willing to die for the planet, or what? I really like the idea of Aerith just not being willing to die. Like, I understand that's part of her character and all that stuff, but who wants to know that they're going to march to their death down this journey?
And honestly, that makes the future of these remakes so interesting, because a lot of the debate surrounding remakes is it kills the original. Like, there's no point to play the original. This makes it so you can literally have your cake and eat it too. You have the original, and you have this reinterpretation that's very similar, but does a lot of different things. So it makes both well worth playing. At least if by the end of this remake series, they pull it off.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Because like, these are writers that are good at setting things up, but not necessarily good at delivering. And that's been Square Enix's problem for a number of years. And like, people immediately compare this ending to Kingdom Hearts, which I like Kingdom Hearts, but it does get a bit navel-gazing.
Yeah, the problem with Kingdom Hearts is, like, unlike this property, is that they're always setting up for whatever's coming next, and it's like, okay, we're gonna tease these vague things, and we'll come up with reasons for that later. Here, I feel like they might have a more solid roadmap, since they have, well, a complete game to reference this time. Granted, they're giving themselves license to separate from that, but I feel like we're still going to get Cid's backstory, we're still going to get Yuffie's backstory, and Vincent, and get all that corroborated, and have that all in there. I mean, we've already seen Kate Sith in that one little scene. If you're playing this for the first time, it's like, what's with the random cat all of a sudden? You know, if you don't know who Kate Sith is. It's one of those things where they're clearly setting up the pieces for the still important moments, but I think it's the minutia, very much like how we saw with Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's going to change as we go along.
Yeah, it's kind of important to note that while we know the story of the original Final Fantasy VII, the characters still do not. Mm-hmm. And possibly Sephiroth does, which adds like an antagonist angle to what he does, but they're probably still going to proceed of the same volition of going to Calm, talking about that story of like Cloud's flashback, going through the swamps and all that jazz, and like going through Junon, and basically proceeding along Final Fantasy VII until there's a point where they have to confront what they're doing, or can switch something around, or somebody has information they wouldn't have otherwise. Cosmo Canyon seems like a great place to understand the idea of a multiverse.
That is also true. Or, let's dive into Cloud's head even more, come Nibelheim, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really liked is that, so there's the thing we talked about with Zack, where he has now apparently survived, at least in one universe. They show at the end of the game Aerith and Cloud walking past, and like Zack walking past them in the like it's poetic license. They're not like physically there, but it kind of feels like Aerith recognizes it a little bit as somebody who is attuned to the planet, and she says something like, I Miss the Steel Sky Already, which is actually my favorite reference to Crisis Core of the game's many references to Crisis Core, because the last time she was with Zack wanted to take her out of Midgar, but she refused because she is afraid of the sky. So this is her like going, okay, I'm gonna face my fear and just go through this, but it to me says that there's going to be more Zack in the future. That is not just that one part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can almost see like a mid chapter being that focuses on Zack and maybe expands upon that.
I can see that being the tutorial for the next game.
Oh yeah, that'd be wild, wouldn't it?
We do kind of, like at the very beginning of chapter 2, whatever you want to call it, need an explanation as to what has now happened to Zack. I mean, they emphasize it so much at the end of the game that, I mean, he was originally, if I remember correctly, the story was Zack gets killed, and that's basically right before Cloud goes to Midgar.
Right.
So I imagine that they were headed there together, so that would mean Zack is in Midgar now, or at least unless his plans changed following Shinra's assault on him. Also, you know, technically all of that should predate, like, I wonder where he is now, because if he survived that attack, which predates Cloud even coming to Midgar, doesn't that mean that he technically has now been in Midgar for a while at the point that the game ends? Like, I have a lot of questions about how this all plays out. But I do feel like you kind of have to open with that. Like, tell us what the heck happened to Zack. Where is he? What's he doing? And I imagine at some point he crosses paths with Aerith and Cloud and everyone else.
Potentially. And the thing is, we never see Cloud during Zack's scenes. We don't know what he's up to because
he talks to someone in Shinra soldier uniform and he says Cloud's name, but they don't really focus on him at all.
Mm-hmm. And the key thing is, there's only one Buster Sword.
Yeah,
he has it, and Zack has it at the end, and of course, Cloud has it. So that's another thing. Like, okay, is there just 2 Buster Swords now? But the Buster Sword is, you know, Crisis Core shows is kind of important as it was passed down to Zack from Angeal. Right. So.
But again, I think it's a parallel universe thing. I think this is going to end up more parallel universes colliding than like weird time travel shenanigans.
Yeah, this is definitely not time travel. This doesn't feel time travel. This feels parallel universe. And okay, you know, like the player knows what's going to happen. How are the characters going to interpret it as they come to those points at this time, and you know how they react? Because I mean, even Big turnaround, unintentional pun, Big survived.
Yeah. That was surprising to me. It's because they didn't make it explicit that Wedge died. You see him being carried out by whispers, and you hear glass breaking, which very much implies he dies. But
in the same way that he died in the original game too. Those whispers are course correcting him, and that's how I eventually interpret it. It's like, okay, no, you were supposed to die, so we're gonna just toss you out this window now.
It's gonna be curious, like, what does Biggs wake up and change the story in any way? Like, what is this one Avalanche member way back stuck in Midgar going to do? Because they made a point to show he survived, and I'm not sure if that's just to say, hey, Fate's gone, some things have changed, or it's saying like, Fate's gone, Biggs is here now, he's going to be the one that delivers materia to Sephiroth or something like that.
Or maybe Zack and Biggs team up or something like that.
Is there a reason for them to come back to Midgar near the end of Disc 2 or whatever, like that time and place, if Biggs is there still leading Avalanche?
I mean, technically, they want to help out to take care of the whole Sister Ray thing.
Yeah, but I like, it's things like that I'm thinking of like, what does that one person being alive mean? Like, what ripple effects does that have?
The thing is, I mean, if I write it in my head, and of course they can easily go in a completely different direction, but Biggs is from Sector 5. He took care of the kids in Sector 5, helped out there before he joined Avalanche, and obviously they're showing him kind of in Sector 5, at least that's my interpretation. And where is Zack going to head to meet up with Aerith? Sector 5. So that's a good way to get those two characters to potentially meet, depending on how they're going to tell this story.
Yeah, what this has done for me is it made me very excited about Part 2 in a way that I would not have been if it were a strict retelling. I would still have been excited, but the second they release screenshots and they show something that's not from the original area around there, I'm going to be like, I'm going to go wild with speculation, because I'm going to need to know what this is supposed to be.
It has me so curious. The thing is, I like what they've reinterpreted and kept mostly the same. Like, I like the extra characterization they've given to Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. I like, the new character of Roche, who is just ridiculous. I like the fact that you have that extra moment with President Shinra where he's hanging off the ledge and Barrett saves him and then he gets killed. Like, he's not right away. Mm-hmm. Like, they show bits and pieces where they're fighting against fate and it's different from the original, and then the whispers are there to course correct, like with Barrett surviving or Shinra dying.
I did notice they took out one scene that was before you fight Airbuster. It's the same basic scene of you talk to President Shinra, but in the original, President Shinra was there himself, and he directly talks to Cloud and says, like, I remember you. And that scene makes no sense in the grander story of Final Fantasy VII, but so I can see why they removed it. But it's stuff like that I'm like, okay, what did they need? Like, because they remove Hojo when he's about to spill the beans to Cloud, so obviously they need Cloud to know later. And I'm curious if, like, do they make Fate coming back a part of future games? Is it just gone forever now?
My interpretation is it's probably gone forever. Like, that's the big success of this one, is you've defeated Fate and you've held off Sephiroth for now and realized that, yeah, he still needs to be taken care of. So the goals are the same, but the rigidity of the quest is now gone.
Mm-hmm. One of the small little lore things I liked in the game was, like, the reference to Shiva healing the North Crater, which is like, if you follow it back, it's like, oh, Shiva was there when Genova landed. She was the one that stopped Genova.
That's the funny thing, is, like, we're focusing so much on the end, but those are where the big questions about what comes next comes in, because the rest of the story, again, I don't know how much to really go into it, but just all the extra stuff they add. Like, we have not talked at all about Red 13, and this interpretation of Red is fantastic in my mind. He has that regality to him. There's a bit of a playfulness to him. I love the scene where Barrett says he needs to smile more, and he has that creepy smile, and Barrett's like, no, you're good. There's some great interactions here. That whole escape sequence with the G-Bike is amazing.
That sequence, which feels pretty extended, was just so much fun. Like, you get a little taste of it in the beginning when you're helping Jessie out on her side quest to go see her parents, which I thought was another really cool character moment for her. But just being on the Hardy Daytona and heading down there, and just the fight is so intense, especially against, that not final boss anymore, but when you're fighting the rollerball, heading down the highway, that's just such a great fight, and it's so satisfying to finally kill it. Like, in the prior fights, you don't really need to use Cloud's triangle moves, like the spinning slash or the air slash or the ranged move that much. Mm-hmm. But taking out the tires on the rollerball and then just wailing on it felt super satisfying. My only regret, I was kind of hoping that they would let us use materia like lightning or something like that during the fight, but I really enjoyed the motorcycle segments in this game. They just did it so well, and it feels just close enough to the original that it feels, nostalgic at the same time. Yeah,
I'm excited for, like, future games where they have, like, snowboard sequences and stuff like that, where I bet they're going to do a pretty good job. Like, it's not going to be a full snowboarding game, but it's going to be probably better than it has any right to be.
Yeah. Or even maybe they'll make the sub actually fun. Something like that.
I'm very excited. Honestly, like, one of the things I'm most excited for in the future of this game is being in the Golden Saucer. Just exploring that thing.
If the wall market is this, imagine what they'll do with the Gold Saucer.
Oh, 100%. The Gold Saucer is one of my favorite places in all of the original. And I can't wait to see what they do with it. All the mini games they cram into it. I imagine that, like, simple things like darts and stuff will be back in there, but they're going to have a ton of new stuff in that area. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I just had a thought. It's very unlikely to happen, but wouldn't it be something if you get to the Gold Saucer and you find Jessie with amnesia, but still knowing that she wants to be an actress, and that she's actually an actress as part of the play?
She seemed more definitively dead than most.
She did, but hey, Biggs was on that pillar too, and I don't know how the heck he got out, so that's something there. But I'm just saying, like, if they want to play with it and play with Fate, and they have that, they specifically mentioned her wanting to be an actress at Gold Saucer.
Yeah.
Just saying, if they want to play with things.
I'd love it if she resurfaced, but yeah, I'm kind of with Imran on here that she's got to be dead. As much as I don't want her to be, I feel in my bones that she is dead.
I want to see the play now, especially after seeing the Honeybee Inn.
Oh yeah,
that Honeybee Inn sequence could not have been handled better.
It's because like you can't remove it because it's a thing that people remember about that game and they like about that game, but you also have to change it because it doesn't fly in 2020. Like this gay panic scene of Cloud. Like the joke is, oh, gay men are a part of this hotel or this brothel, and like. Even in the best case scenario, even if it was still a brothel that did not involve gay men, it would still be raise some alarms. But
Yeah.
like making it be like a burlesque show and Cloud just being like surprisingly good at it is. I wish that rhythm game was more of a rhythm game and not just a button press thing, but it was still a fun thing.
It's just a fun sequence to get through and set up and finally reach. I was just entranced the entire time and loving it to death. It's a great callback too because I was, rewatching footage to gather stuff for guides and whatnot. And there's that earlier sequence during the Sector 5 reactor bombing mission where Barrett's like, oh, we're going to dance on TV when they're taking down their machine because we're going to do that. And Cloud's like, I don't dance. And then you have this entire sequence. It's so good. Again, Wall Market's great. From the hand massage, which is just wow, to...
Weirdly raunchy.
Yeah, it is. Because I'm assuming all of us paid the $3,000.
I saw all of them. The other ones are not quite as nice to Cloud.
No, the middle standard one's okay. I like him coming out of it and looking at his hand going flexible, something like that. But then the cheap one is just torture to him.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to like raising chocobos. Are they going to do that in the next game too? Because that ranch is not far from there, and you do need a chocobo to get across the swamp. Like, are they going to? I assume that swamp is going to be a chapter instead of like a small thing to move over. But I'm very curious. Like, do they expand everything out as much as they've expanded Midgar? And I don't think they can because then this game would take forever. But I don't think they can afford to not do it in a lot of places because there's a lot of stuff that just abridged in a way we accepted in 1997 that might be harder to deal with today.
Yeah, they might be. It might be a lot easier for them to, like as Steve suggested, have a prologue or a tutorial section where we play as Zack, establish what he's doing, and then just come back to the crew in calm.
Mm-hmm. I want them because like they're gonna have to reset you. Essentially, of like all these people have like Thundergaw and all that stuff. Like they have high level materia spells. They should have Yuffie steal all your stuff at the beginning of the game and be like, "Well, guess we're starting from nothing."
That would be amazing.
I had a friend suggest that, and that makes so much sense, especially since they're pushing that whole Wu Tai is working with Avalanche story throughout the bombings. Like for some reason, Shinra's warmongering, and they're setting that whole thing up so they can reignite the war with Wu Tai. And that's a perfect way to bring in Yuffie and have her, steal your materia if you want.
It was a little weird to me, and I wonder if it pays off in later games, how much they, went into Avalanche. Because I had always interpreted it as, maybe I was just wrong, but that the 4 people in Tifa's bar are Avalanche, the entirety of Avalanche. But apparently it's a much larger group that actually has paramilitary equipment and moles deep within Shinra and stuff like that.
Biggs does mention that they're part of the Old Guard, which is a reference to Before Crisis, which was the cell phone game. And in that game, you played as the Turks, and the villains were Avalanche, who were going way too far, where they basically want to destroy all humans in order for the planet to survive. They were extreme eco-terrorists. So the interpretation I had, and they even tried to assassinate the president at one point, and which they referenced thanks to Heidegger, is Avalanche, the guys who made an attempt on your life. So my interpretation is these guys are the remnants of the old Avalanche, but they've kind of reformed and be okay, maybe not quite so explode, destroy everybody.
Yeah, I'm curious if that shows when we eventually do go to Wutai, is there going to be evidence of them supplying Avalanche with military stuff? Because it does seem like they're the ones who gave it to them.
I mean, that makes the most sense. I mean, nobody else would really do that unless I got more people like Mayor Domino who helps out. Which Domino was still a lot of fun in this one. Yeah,
that was one of the things I was curious. How do they hold that up? Because it was a really boring puzzle in the first game of just finding a password that essentially says Mayor is the best. And now it's a legitimately fun thing. I wish they wouldn't have showed you exactly on the map where the guy was, because that was a little deflating, but it was overall a cool scene.
I actively ignored the map for that one just because I wanted to walk around asking people. And you're right, it takes something that felt mundane in the original. It makes it actually kind of fun. And the thing that I really enjoyed was right around the corner from that is the battle simulator, which I was just kind of shocked to find. I was like, oh, cool. Like, there's a lot I can do here. I felt like Shinra HQ, save for one portion, and I remember I asked you about this, Imran, was where you have to have Tifa jump to swing on some lights and she falls.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the game does like this awful job of signaling to you that you can get on the cars. And I just assumed I couldn't, because up to that point in the game, that was something that wasn't possible.
I accidentally ran into it. Like, I was just running around, and all of a sudden I was jumping up on the car. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I think I just saw the platforms. I was like, maybe I could get up there. But yeah, I wandered around for a good couple of minutes trying to figure it out.
I think it was a combination of just being really tired at the time, and I just looked at them and I was like, no, those are things you can't do. So I just went around them the whole time. I probably spent like 20-25 minutes in there before you graciously handed me the answer to that one. I probably would have saved and taken a break, but just to clear my mind before going back, had you not clued me into that. But yeah, it's with that aside, I think Shinra HQ is just it's such a well realized location. We talked a lot about Wall Market in the previous discussion, but Shinra HQ is really well done. Like, it feels more like a real place, because some of the puzzles that were in the original aren't here, and makes the building kind of make a lot more sense from a design perspective.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to find all the pieces to the Midgar diorama or things like that.
But they still have the diorama in there. So, like,
exactly.
It's good that they had to, like, they made a point to show you these things, even if they're not going to, like, force you to solve a puzzle about them.
And I loved getting the little sense of each of the, Shinra heads, learning more about them. We get more scenes with Reeve, which sets up his character for the future, which is nice. I love how slimy they have Hojo. Like, they got Hojo perfect in this. The thing that really blew my mind about the Shinra building, and I was just absorbed into, was their, I guess, picture show. I don't know how to describe it. That VR sequence where they show the ancients, life as the ancients, and they show what their vision of Neo Midgar is. I'm like, holy crap! Actually, seeing this, seeing what the past was like, seeing what Neo Midgar is actually planned to be like, that is really cool.
And it does a good job of like, so this is what they want life to be, and I think if you trusted them, it feels like, okay, maybe it makes sense for them to get there, but also they put a lot of stock into this fairy tale that nobody really knows is true.
Yeah, that is kind of weird, that this is something they don't even know truly exists, but they're out there publicly talking about it like it's a real thing that's going to happen. The other thing that I found interesting was, one, Neo Midgar looked kind of cool. Two, how did they end up with original style Midgar if this was like their vision? Because Midgar is grimy and nasty, and Neo Midgar looks very clean in comparison.
It's like the original DS versus the DS Lite.
Yeah.
That's pretty apt.
The sense I get to it is that they were, because they showed Shinra's life, like he's the one that built this up, so I'm guessing it was just sort of like this mishmash thing where they're like, okay, we have Midgar established, we want a higher class, so here's some plates. And Neo Midgar is like, okay, we're actually building the city from the ground up and with a full vision in mind rather than just being piecemeal.
Did you see the Final Fantasy X-2 reference in the museum?
No.
So there's a picture of like all the people who like founded Shinra in the President Shinra wing of the museum. And one of the people in the middle has a gas mask looking thing on. And
oh my god, it's Shinra from 10-2.
Yes, basically.
Oh my god. I they inferred that, but I didn't think they'd go through with it. I thought it was just like a wink wink nudge nudge, but maybe it still is. Who knows?
It's definitely, I bet it's a thing that they get asked about, and Kitase's like, yeah, absolutely. Because I think he was the one who confirmed it originally in one of the Ultimanias, but it's an Ultimania, so who cares? But now they're being a bit more explicit about it.
That's so funny. I will admit one other thing. We were talking about Steve having trouble finding the cars. It was towards the end of the game until I realized there was a mini-map. I just happened to hit L2 randomly outside of battle. All of a sudden it changed from the little bar at the top showing where your destination is to an actual mini-map. It's like, oh, well, that would have been useful earlier, so I didn't have to check the map all the time.
One of the things that annoyed me about this game is that so the game does a very bad job of showing you or telling you when you don't need to search everywhere for something. Like, using Sector 5 as an example. They make reference early on to, hey, if we find these items that we're disposing of, we can become more powerful or whatever. They don't tell you that that's going to be right before the boss. So I'm like looking everywhere for these things. Like, did I miss it already? Is it just in the back over there? And
oh my god, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I hated this section so much because of that. Because there's also a part where Barrett tells you, like, hey, you want to make that detour and get that stuff? And you're nowhere near it.
Yeah.
And so that to me is telling me, like, oh crap, I must have missed it.
And then you have these open areas with nothing in them, and like, that must be it.
Yeah, exactly. I start looking at wall textures that slightly resemble doors, running around, going all the way back up all the stairs. And I'm like, it wasn't until I just gave up. I was like, I must not have something. There must be something I don't know. I don't know how to get there. And then you get down and they're like, oh yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
Right
They do that a
before the
lot.
boss.
Like, there's a one side quest that's like, find all 3 of Corneo's doors, and one of them you have to like go through the story
Progress
to
the
get
story.
there.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that
I'm
threw
trying to
me
do
off
all
too.
these. I'm trying to do all of these before I progress the story, but I can't find this one door. So I had to eventually get there. It's like, oh, that's where it is.
And that's what I got the sense, because if you look at the key items, it'll say like in the sewers. I'm like, okay, I can't get to the sewers through Sector 7 anymore, so there must be another way. So I guess I'll just continue with Corneo, and that's how I got the indication to move on, because the key items will actually have descriptions sometimes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not very well communicated, and if you're trying to go for everything, it can really throw you off. Yeah, it's just minor miscommunication issues, but then other times it'll completely delight me with what they keep. Like, one of the side missions you can get is basically the whole sequence of events that you needed to do in the original game in order to get Cloud's dress. Mm-hmm. And it's just a side quest to get this special sauce, which I'm not going to go into that. And another point, like, I remember you in another chat, Imran, mentioned like Hell House is in there. Like, oh no, the Hell House is in there. And like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, I was like, this game is going to lose some points if it does not have Hell House. Because I know where he's supposed to be in the game, and I went through there, I was like, well, I couldn't have missed him. Did they cowered out and not put Hell House in? But man, they really put Hell House. Like, they did an amazing job. He's actually even harder on hard mode, in that he has new moves. That time where like doors open up and they give you some items, like some magic to recover to take on his God mode part. Now instead of like good stuff, it's 2 sweepers.
Oh God!
Wow,
that's awful.
That's messed up.
And he has a move where he literally just pours out tonberries too, and you have to kill them all before they wake up.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to do that.
There's a few enemies that got upgraded to boss status, like that one enemy in the drum that I really enjoyed, actually, because you start out fighting with Cloud and Barrett and then finish off with Tifa and that one.
Eligor is another good example of like, he was a very rare enemy and you only really fought him so you could take like Eris' big like important staff from him, but now he's
which is still there.
Yeah, like that area had a ton of boss fights.
Oh God, yeah, there is. It's actually shocking how many bosses are in this game.
Yeah, I thought they were going to cut down, honestly, but I think
there's 30.
They have just as many and a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and then there's that whole. Ooh, that is a gauntlet at the end.
Yeah, the last couple of hours I think are like 6 boss fights in a row.
Oh, yeah, because oh man, you had Hojo's monstrosity. Then you had Thing in the Drum. Then you had the escape and have that mech fight. You had Rufus.
Yeah, Genova.
Just all in this row, yeah.
The highway fight, then all of the various Destiny fights, then finally Sephiroth. I really liked the text description they had for the Destiny, Rubrum, and all that. Mm-hmm. Like, the came from a future that was shaped by like things that happened here, and like it makes it feel like, oh, these are people from future, like what happened past Final Fantasy VII. And they're like, oh, these guys are messing with the past. We need to stop them.
Well, that's the thing, is that if you read the descriptions, one uses a sword, one uses fists, the other one uses a gun. Well, who does that sound like?
I did not even put that together.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, geez, it's like future versions of, well, the main cast minus Aerith, which makes sense. Aerith's not there. It's just from the future or a different timeline.
Yeah, I just thought it was like, oh, these are weapons. I didn't think about them being...
No.
Huh.
Unless the big one is Aerith.
Speaking of which, I kind of wonder if, like, weapons in this game, like the ultimate weapon, all that stuff, are going to be, like, changed into, like, whispers. Like, because they were originally the planet's defenses against, you know, people bleeding it dry. So are they now going to be, like, the arbiters of fate as well?
I don't know, but, man, you have to massively reinterpret those guys because they're just
to
so
make them
huge.
boss fights, yeah. I really wonder what they're going to do. Like, honestly, I expect that these next couple of games are going to be next-gen only because I don't see a situation where... you can see they were struggling with some things like open areas with this one. I assume that next-gen will give them the overhead to take care of that.
I would assume so, and I have a feeling this game's going to sell pretty well for them, so the budget's there.
It is probably the last big game for a number of months, even if it weren't... Like, even in the worst-case scenario, it was going to sell a lot better. This current era is going to give it a lot more legs, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
I think it's sold out everywhere, too.
Yeah.
I actually made a trip out to the store yesterday. My Target never sells out of games. Like, when Animal Crossing came out, I was able to walk in and get a copy for my kid, no problem. I went in the other day, and I just heard someone, like, several people asking about Final Fantasy VII, when they were going to get more, you know, what's going on. The GameStop next to, or, you know, in the same shopping center as my local Target was also sold out of the game entirely. I tried to get a copy for my brother who lives in Washington near Seattle. Couldn't find one for him there either. It's insane. People are bored. there's a lot of people picking up a big, you know, much talked about game just because they need something to do.
And I have to imagine for a lot of people, this is pure nostalgia. This might be the only RPG they really played because everybody's talking about before, and now they're talking about it again. So let's see what this is all about.
I do wonder what the, like, because this game had a weird staggered release where people in Australia got it pretty early, and I wonder if the ending leaking out the way it did, mostly through like text descriptions, ended up poisoning the well a little bit.
I can imagine it would be, because if you just read it, I can see this being like, well, that's a stupid ending. But actually experiencing it, seeing the details, having those moments, because you referenced it in the non-spoiler discussion, but the fight against Sephiroth is freaking amazing, especially when you get to that last 10% where the song really kicks in, and it's just like, it's a fight, and it feels good to pull it off and take care of him, and it is an epic finale that this game kind of does, needed.
Oh yeah, and like you were referencing, Derek, in that fight, when you finally get to fight Sephiroth with Aerith, such an awesome moment to be able to actually get, a little bit of revenge if you were around when she got killed in the original. To get to see her kind of wail on him a bit felt really good.
Yeah, the first time for me it was just Tifa and Barrett, then the second time Aerith was the first one in, and then Barrett came in after, and Tifa was like the last person who didn't actually get to contribute to the fight at all.
Oh,
and it's weird how many of there's small examples of variable things there are in the game. Like, I still haven't figured out what determines the Chapter 14 end scene.
Yeah, I saw that as well. Like, there's I have one of three, and I don't know how to get the other two, and I don't see anything else online. I have no idea what it's talking about. Fortunately, it's not tied to a trophy or anything, but...
Right. My first one was Aerith, and I was like, okay, this is a pretty cool scene, because, she tells Cloud, don't fall in love with me, because, one, she knows she's about to die, and two, it's like, oh, I understand what they're going for, but it's a little weird that she's like, I can't tell if this is Cloud imagining this or whatever. And then I went the hard mode playthrough. It was Tifa, and it was actually a shockingly emotional scene of
and
Tifa
this was
crying.
in the garden, right?
Yes.
Yes. So how the heck does Aerith show up? Because I've only had Tifa at this point. So what I imagine this to be is that, like the original, there might be a hidden counter for who you talk to most. Who did you interact with most? Like in the original playthrough, did you talk to Aerith in the sewers first, or did you talk to Tifa?
That was what I originally... So yes, I did do that, and I changed those up. But it says there's 3 scenes, and I have to assume the third scene is Barrett?
Yeah. So it might be possible to just not check on either of them?
Maybe. I don't know what that would... how you get to that. I'm very curious for, this game to be broken open and found out, because it literally just came out, and even though I've platinumed it, there's still a number of mysteries. In my hard mode playthrough, I didn't realize that... The first time I played through the game... When you initially sneak up to the plate, there's like you beat some soldiers, and then like there's a radio going off saying like, "Hey, come in. Are you guys in trouble?" And I just went past it and then got in like 5 to 10 battles after that. When I did in hard mode, I actually found the radio, and Cloud answered and said like, "Okay, no, we're clear. It was nothing." And then there were just fewer battles.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. I just thought it was a fun little extra scene you could get.
So I was like, okay, so what else am I missing in this game? Like, there's stuff that's probably not tied to trophies. They're just like small little things that I would not have noticed otherwise.
Which is an amazing addition because there were so many choices like that in the original, but they have far-reaching consequences. And now they just have that in smaller moments where the story still maintains the same structure, but the little minute details are all different.
It is really interesting to me. Like, you guys are talking about this chapter 14 ending. I didn't know that it differed. I've had Tifa both times. Mm-hmm. So I just assumed it was always Tifa.
That's what I thought, but if you look at the battle log or the log thing that shows you all your stats, that's where they mention it. Interesting.
Yeah, see, I didn't even notice that. So now that gives me another reason to go back. Talking about the fact that there's a third one and that it's possibly Barrett ties into... I remember in the original at Gold Saucer, there was like a date scene.
Mm-hmm.
And you could most people assumed you could just do it with Tifa and Aerith, but it turned out like there was a way, if you played the game in a specific way, that you could have the date scene with Barrett too. And I didn't know that for like 20 years. Somebody ended up making a YouTube video on it, and I ended up watching it. I was like, how the hell did I not even know this was possible? Somebody else, I think, triggered a new fight in another Final Fantasy game after like 20 something years of people not even knowing it was there. I want to say it was 8, possibly.
Maybe 9.
There's so many secrets hiding in these games, and I can't wait for people to like just data mine the hell out of this and find all its secrets, because I'm sure there's a ton of stuff we don't even know about.
They actually, so speaking of data mines, like pretty infamously, this game leaked out way earlier than it was supposed to. The demo leaked out way earlier than it was supposed to, and people were able to data mine a lot of the demo, and people thought they had more or less solved it. Like, there was a big chapter list, and it said who the boss of every chapter was, and the final boss it showed was Genova. So they actually managed to mislead the data miners on this one, of just because nobody saw that chapter 18 coming at all.
That's awesome. I love that they did that.
That is amazing.
That Genova fight was amazing, by the way.
Yeah, like when it starts raining acid and like the Genova theme starts playing, as I alluded to in the review podcast we did, but like that music started playing, I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's those moments of this game where it's like, oh yeah, Final Fantasy VII, now I remember, are like the moments that like make this game for me. Like, and even separate from nostalgia, I'm sure I would still love it, but the nostalgia just adds that extra layer, that crunchy extra layer on top for me.
Yeah, exactly. It again, it's a remake that knows it's a remake, and that makes it almost more interesting to play, because you're getting something familiar yet very different, and it does not mess with the old one. It's like I would almost recommend playing the original and then jumping into this.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense now why they ported that game everywhere, right? Like right before this game came out. Like, obviously, yes, money, but also that game still exists, and like I said, I can still very much see why people feel hurt and betrayed by this ending, but also, as somebody who wants to see where they're going with it, I'm excited to see. I'm excited for this turn of events.
Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, there's been false guides and Easter eggs and things like that lead people along the way of like, this is how you have Aerith survive, or come back or resurrect her. Obviously, those are all fake, but now we might have a canon version where Aerith survives and you have a new scenario, and who knows what happens.
My hope is that the final boss now, like the final boss of this entire series, is Cloud and Sephiroth versus Genova.
You think, like, redeem Sephiroth?
Maybe not redeem him, but, like, make it weird enough that it results in the villain not really being the villain. I just wanted to see them change. Like, I think I mentioned this on our Kind of Funny spoiler cast, but, like, this game seems inspired to me by the rebuild of Evangelion. Which, do you guys know what that is?
Yes, I've watched them.
Yeah, so like the way that thing changed things out, I think Nojima and Nomura saw that and were like, what if we did that too? What if we just what if we took this thing that everyone thinks they know what we're going to do and we twist it? And I can see why people would be very pissed off about that, but I love that idea. I love it when they take well-loved things like Star Wars and do interesting things with it.
It is an interesting idea, but that Evangelion also shows how it can go very wrong, because I love the first 2 movies. Third movie is like, what the heck is going on? There was like no explanation. So,
which is the danger of this one too, right?
Yes, exactly. That is the danger. So hopefully they establish things a bit more, still have those moments that people want to see, but also know when to change things up. And I think that was the brilliance of this one, is they knew which scenes to expand upon, they knew which scenes to keep, they knew what to go there. But again, there's been how many years of people talking about their favorite moments, and it becomes apparent what everybody likes.
I think it's important that like Rufus was one of the people who saw the whispers, because like there's no explanation for why he did, and nobody else in Shinra does. So does that mean the President Shinra saw them as well? Does he act any differently with this knowledge he now has?
That is a really interesting question. One of the things I like the most about this first episode of the remake, is that it feels kind of like a perfect microcosm of the entirety of Final Fantasy VII. Like you get a lot of the things that people remember, like you were saying earlier, Imran. Like you get the fight with Genova, you get the fight with Sephiroth. But then narratively, like we've discussed, they kind of throw the door wide open on the possibilities for the next one. And I kind of want to see them kind of go nuts with this. Like I want to see just it go off the wall. There are things that, I feel definitely need to happen still. But I think I'd be fine if we didn't have another Sephiroth fight, or at least not one, on the scale of what we just saw. Because they kind of, like, how are you going to bookend this series of games with, that final moment where Cloud and Sephiroth are in space, or wherever the heck that was. I feel like the Omni Slash moment loses some of its potency if we already saw a version of that happen at the end of the first game. So I do kind of like the idea of Cloud and Sephiroth teaming up, or just something just dramatically different from the narrative that we all know happening.
I cannot see Sephiroth and Cloud teaming up, mainly because Sephiroth is the one controlling Genova. That's why it takes the forms. It's
specific, like those specifics. I just like that example of something going that insane is what I want.
Well, my thought is double Omni Slash with Zack. That makes a bit more sense since he's alive, or some sort of triple attack with Aerith or something like that. There's ways of doing that sort of thing. But I'm also of the opinion that I don't want every chapter to end with another Sephiroth fight. Yeah, I want chapter 2 to end in some other way.
I mean, it has to end in where Aerith would die, right?
I mean, it could.
If they get there. Like, it's a long disc.
That is it. Yeah, there's a lot to happen. Like,
I'm totally okay with a cliffhanger ending. Like, that's what I really want. I don't feel like this first chapter ended on a cliffhanger at all.
No,
I feel like it was a good stopping point. I would be totally okay with, like, something happens, like Sephiroth is coming down to impale Aerith, and Cloud, having seen this, just shoves her out of the way, and game end. see you in chapter 3.
You're saying the possibility of Cloud dies and Aerith becomes the main character,
or even just I mean, like, maybe you don't even know that much, right? You just see that Cloud prevents the death in some way, and then fade to black, or cut to black.
What would you think about the next game starts like in the flashback with Calm, and Tifa just goes, "Yeah, Cloud, that's not what happened." And like actually explain, because that was honestly one of the weirder things about Final Fantasy VII to me, is that Tifa held that information back so long. And if like now that they're freed from fate, what if he says like, "Hey, we need to talk about this because this is not actually like what you've been saying to people, not true."
I almost wonder if they will just skip that explanation entirely, because they've all seen Sephiroth, but who knows?
Yeah, I feel like that's a key moment for Cloud. I imagine I'd like to see it go differently, because it never did make sense that Tifa just was kind of like, like while he tells this just crazy, insane story that didn't happen.
Well, I kind of always chalked it up to her being really confused, because obviously Cloud was not there, yet he's recounting these events that are remarkably similar to what actually happened, just with him in the role of Zack.
It feels like the stakes are way too high to not just like announce like
it does, but it's just also like interpretation of stories and making excuses for him.
Yeah, but I think that would be an interesting change if they decided to go that direction of like, hey, we've been through some stuff literally just an hour ago. We should talk a bit, like in a bit more detail about some of these things.
There's so many possibilities, and I'm
which I love.
Really looking forward. Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like we don't have this set thing. It's like, okay, we'll have this. I can't wait to see how they interpret these moments. Now I have that. Plus, I can't wait to see what they just do.
Yeah, yeah. This is the part where the story becomes unpredictable, and I think that's what I love the most about this. Is coming into the first chapter, I think we all had clear expectations. Like, this is what we expect to see, and for the most part, we got that. We got what we expected. But if even taking the ending at just face value, you kind of realize that the script has been thrown out, and who knows what's going to happen now. But I'm willing to, I'm excited for it, given just how great this first chapter is. Like, I can't wait to see more of this. I'm excited for it to get crazy.
I'm intrigued, and I think people are going to be watching any scene in the episode 2 like a hawk. Like, people are going to be looking for any differences and seeing what exactly is going on and what all they show. It's going to be fascinating.
They've made it so the marketing for episode 2 is going to be an event. You could not watch anything from Final Fantasy, like the remake marketing, and because you assumed it'd be fine. Like, I've played this game before, or I hear a lot about this game, I want to go into it fresh. This one, everyone is going to be, there will be like 100-page reset era threads over every screenshot.
Just everything poured over. It's like, what could this mean? Are they going to change this? Is this going to stick the same? Were they messing with this? Like, we don't know. And whew. That's like, the more I talk about it, because I the more excited I get, and that's how I felt at the end, because I was like, I wasn't sure, but as I was processing it, I'm like, I'm kind of into this.
Like I said, if they have to stick to landing, and that's the hardest part, but
that is.
Hopefully
Square Enix is not always successful at that. I think 9 was the last time I was completely satisfied with the Final Fantasy ending.
I think, probably about that for me. Honestly, it might have been 7, as far as like I'm concerned. But we'll see how that goes now.
I understand, like, hey, this is my chance to go in fresh, but and obviously you've spoiled yourself now. But if you have played the remake first, this is a great excuse to go back to the original and see those scenes and then get that context, because they really do feel like companion pieces now, rather than just, oh, here's the original, here's the remake, and it's like, no, you kind of need both.
Hey, on that note, I was thinking about like people who haven't played Crisis Core. Do you think they actually like incorporate Genesis in those things? Because they make a slight reference to him in the game.
Dude, oh yeah, the G cells, or they're talking about Soldier G and Soldier S cells.
Yes. So I don't think they bring him back because of Gokt, but I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back something of that like experiment, something of Crisis Core's story, like to integrate into this one.
Maybe. I can almost see them using this as an excuse to maybe redo, like have a Crisis Core remake with this new interpretation of Zack, and maybe get rid of all the Gak stuff, or have a different explanation for it, because that was the weird, that was a little weird. But then of course Gak came back for the Dirge of Cerberus, or was in Dirge of Cerberus as like this weird thing at the end. It's just like, thank you for dropping that.
And also probably the reason that Crisis Core is not on any modern systems or like easily purchasable online is because of Gokt.
Yeah, which is a shame, because it's easily the best game in the compilation.
Yeah, and now seemingly somewhat necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that'll be the thing that holds us over, or something like that. Who knows? But it's weird to have this much open possibility for what could happen, especially in terms of a remake.
I'm definitely more excited than I've been about Final Fantasy in a number of years.
This is the most I've been hyped for anything related to Final Fantasy, probably since the original. I've liked other games in the series. I thought 15 was okay. 10 I liked until I beat it. But 7 has always held a special place in my heart. Like you, Derek, it's probably the game that truly got me into RPGs. I played Chrono Trigger before that, and I loved it, but I kind of felt it was more of a one-off. And then once I played Final Fantasy VII, I started to look at other RPGs a lot more seriously.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I got absorbed, and I had to just play anything, especially if it came from Square. Don't care what it was, I'm buying it. Which worked out, because that's how I have Xenogears and Vagrant Story and Brave Fencer Musashi and all that. But, I think we've picked this story pretty clean, the story pretty clean, or spoilers or whatever. Mostly talk about the endgame stuff, but I mean, that's where the real meat of discussion lies. And yeah, unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about, I think that's pretty much good.
Yeah, I think we've covered it.
Cool.
Exhaustively.
Yeah, exactly. That's mainly the ending, which is crazy. But yeah, I think that does it for our Final Fantasy VII Remake post-review discussion. So thank you for watching. And if you liked this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And Imran, where can they find you at?
They can find me on Twitter at ImranZOMG, Twitch at the same username, and on Kinda Funny Games.
And of course, make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Final Fantasy and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.